this guy emailed me and he said, I played at the Bellagio last week in a 1-3 game. Mostly all the recreational players except for one quote unquote for-profit player. First time I'll fold to him in the small blind. He says, I don't chop. This is the for-profit player. I don't chop. Everyone else at the table does chop. Didn't really bother me, but I'm curious about how you feel about this. Thank you very much. Well, I will say I have certainly changed my tune about chopping from when I used to play almost full-time back in the day, and I realized how stupid I was to have this thought, because you can just do the math out. Back at 510 at Commerce, where they used to take a modified drop, meaning that even if there was no flop, they would take $2. And then, of course, in California, it's a flat drop, meaning that it's not a rake, it's worse than a rake. If the flop comes out, they take pretty much everything. It might be $7. Even though if you're playing, say, a 5-5 game, and somebody in the cutoff limps and then the blinds check, they're going to take $7 on the flop. It is unbelievable. Of course, when we're talking about chopping, what we mean is when it gets folded to the blinds, it is typical, not always, that the blinds will chop. Meaning that there's no flop, and in most places, they don't take any rake. Even in that place in Toronto, they don't even take any rake, even in a high rake environment. So you don't pay anything except for some modified areas. But I used to think at Commerce, oh my God, like people play so badly, I'm just going to tilt them by saying I don't chop, because they're going to give me their stack if I don't chop. Like it's going to tilt them so much, right? Now, even if that was true, that it would tilt somebody for not chopping, how much money do you think you can beat somebody playing heads up? Would you play heads up against someone where the drop was $7 a hand? $7 a hand? Because that's what you're doing in my setup when I didn't chop. Or even $5 a hand for that matter. Or even $1 a hand. Maybe make the case with $1 a hand if you were playing super high. But you can play that out. I mean, how many hands, even if you were playing like at full ring pace of like 30 hands per hour, are you going to play somebody heads up for $180 an hour? There's no fucking way. Especially just at 510 where the stacks aren't infinite. So, and in the smaller games where the rake and the drop is even a higher sort of proportion, because in California, like in LA, the drop's the same pretty much across all levels, it makes even less sense to not chop. Now, if it's a rake setup, it's a little bit better. And of course, what a rake is that it's a percentage. So if you were playing like a 2-5 game where it was a 10% rake up to $5, and a guy limped in the small blind for 3 to complete, and you checked, the pot's only $10. They're only taking $1 on the flop. And then as the pot gets larger, they take, a percentage, usually every $10. In California, they took the entire amount. But even with a rake, it was really, really dumb not to chop. Now, if you're playing in a time game, then it probably doesn't matter. But let me give you a little bit of words of advice, like I would say that I have words of wisdom from an elder. Am I an elder? Maybe possibly like an elder in this particular industry. This is part of the reason why I give a lot of shit to Euros. I don't hate Euros, but if you can sort of follow my approach, like you don't want to have a cutthroat sort of bloodthirsty, I'm just trying to squeeze out every goddamn cent that I possibly can have type of image at the table. Like you're not giving up that much by not chopping in a time game. And most of the time, like in a time game, there's not going to be, what I'm saying in a time game, there's no rake. So like in a Texas time game, right? Like you're not giving up that much by like always chopping. I mean, even if you're better than everybody else, you can still chop so that you're not that one guy that kind of sticks out like, oh, this guy is here to take my money. If you're looking at it from the recreational player's perspective, right? That's why I say I always give shit to Euros, because they kind of stick out like sore thumbs as sort of for-profit players. But usually time games, unless you're in Texas, are usually just at the highest stakes. It's not even close at the lower stakes, no matter what the setup is, whether it's flop, whether it's flop drop, rake, rake percentage. It's not even close. You're an idiot. You're just losing money. And I'll give you another piece of word of advice too. And this is a great, great thing that the recreational players love to do. There's a lot of high hand promotions up at Chasers. That sort of reminds me of this. You'd get into these situations in sort of jackpot, super jackpot types of times. Recreational players love to run it out if like you're in some sort of promo, meaning like it gets folded around the blinds, but there's like a high hand promotion or there's a super jackpot. Hey, you got a jackpot hand? Let's check it down. You got a jackpot hand? Let's check it down. Okay. So instead of chopping and not paying anything, what they want to do is they want to play the hand out, not to play against each other, but just run the board out to see if they can get a high hand or a jackpot. Of course, that costs anywhere from $4 to $7. And if you were to actually do the math on that, the odds on that, it's like paying $4 to $7 and getting paid like $20,000 on like a 1 in 100,000 chance, and I'm not even exaggerating that, to run out 5 cards against these basically 2 random hands and have them qualify for a bad beat jackpot. Would you pay $7 to be paid $20,000 or a piece of $20,000 if you won when the actual odds are 100,000 to 1? So what's kind of interesting is that you get in this, because the recreational players love to do that, right? So they might have a situation where the small blind says, you got a jackpot hand, you're in the big blind. And even if you do have a fucking jackpot hand, you just snap muck. No, I don't have a jackpot hand. There was one time a guy did that. I had aces. I'm like, no, I have no jackpot hand. Or ace king. Just lie to them. Nope. I don't have a jackpot hand. Don't show it to them. Because I mean, if they, maybe they would get pissed off if you're like, I don't do that. Just say no. Every time. Say no, I don't have a jackpot hand. It doesn't matter what you have. No one will know. That's a life hack for you right there. But checking it down in the blinds to try to hit a jackpot or a high hand is probably it's much worse than not chopping. From an EV standpoint, it is. I kind of giggle inside when I see that. But, people are there to have a good time. So you sort of welcome it. And that's why I say I will chop. I don't want to be that guy, right? Like they're there to have a good time and have it be welcome. But when they ask me if I have a jackpot hand, I'm going to say no every time, 100% of the time. So that's my take.